Hello, in this live stream, I'm going to talk to you about Catherine Chinari and why she needs to be arrested immediately, why the entire Canadian government needs to be arrested immediately, including Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who was exposed as being a liar, a two-faced liar, when he did the blackface scandal and he lied about it to the media three times. So if the Prime Minister of Canada is a liar and he would lie about something like blackface, just imagine what else he's covered up and lied about. Catherine Chinari, a lawyer, the Attorney General of Canada, is also a liar and a psychopath. Look at that psychopath smile. And she also, when she worked at Edward Royal Law Firm in Toronto, which is where she initially worked before she became Attorney General of Canada, Catherine Chinari would take money from clients and then screw over her own clients. And she put innocent people in prison. Catherine Chinari would tell all her black clients, oh, she was going to help them, that she would fight for them in court. And then Catherine Chinari, she screwed over all of her black clients. And she took their money and she sent innocent black people to prison. So if any of the Candace Owens supporters are listening, it's not just that, there's other things. And I know that Candace Owens, the investigative reporter, she's very much interested in issues such as molestation and I have reached out to Candace Owens, the investigative reporter, trying to get on her show because I said that I have a lot to, it's many articles, it's many things. I've been in Canada for years. I've seen many things and I've experienced many things. I'm a victim of many things. And I'm telling you that Catherine Chinari needs to be arrested immediately. And the entire Canadian government, including the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, which you can see in the photo where he's taking pictures with transvestite school teachers, transvestite police officers. Canada, the entire country of Canada, they're all pedos. And Catherine Chinari, by the way, she helped get that doctor released. The doctor that you see in the screenshot in the thumbnail of this live stream, Dr. George Dudnot, Catherine Chinari got this guy released. That's why that's why that's the thumbnail of this live stream. Catherine Chinari got that guy released. Catherine Chinari, corrupt pedo lawyer. She's a pedo herself. Catherine Chinari is a pedo, and she got that pedo doctor, that pedo Indian doctor, released. And she argued that he was a medical professional. She argued that Dr. George Dudnot, a pedo who molested little white girls on the operating table, Catherine Chinari argued and defended that creep, and she got him released. And she called all of the white women and the white girls, because he did both. He molested both. Dr. George Dudnot, the Indian doctor, the Indian Canadian doctor, he molested white women and white girls. And Catherine Chinari, she defamed the victims. She called the white girls and the white women crazy liars, she said they were hallucinating on the operating table. And Catherine Chinari got a Indian pedo creep released from prison. Catherine Chinari also defamed the victims of Dr. George Dudnot. Catherine Chinari also defamed the victims of Dr. George Dudnot, and she called the victims crazy. Catherine Chinari is actually known, and she's done this to a lot of victims. She has defamed victims and called them crazy. She has taken people who are innocent in the courtroom process and called them crazy. This is what Catherine Chinari does. She discredits victims. And there's a lot of victims that have been discredited because of Catherine Chinari. And this is how the government of Canada, this is one of the ways that the government of Canada covers up for their and protects their creeps and pedos. This is how the government of Canada protects their pedo doctors, their pedo lawyers, their pedo police officers, their pedo military sergeants, like you saw in the other live stream. This is how the government of Canada protects these people. This is how the government of Canada protects the pedos. The government of Canada has lawyers like Catherine Chinari, Canadian lawyers. She's a Canadian lawyer, Attorney General of Canada. And Catherine Chinari calls these people crazy. She calls the victims crazy. So Candace Owens, I probably should have put Candace Owens' tag in the description of the video, so that I would have got more Candace Owens supporters, because that's another thing too. Candace Owens especially would be very interested in this case, all the cases involving Catherine Chinari, as Catherine Chinari is a corrupt woman. She is one of the most corrupt, evil Attorney Generals of Canada. Catherine Chinari needs to be in prison. Catherine Chinari, her whole job, most of what she does as a lawyer is she defames real victims. She calls real victims crazy. Catherine Chinari is the reason that all of these pedos are going free. Catherine Chinari focuses her legal career on freeing and protecting doctors, protecting pedo doctors. And Catherine Chinari played a big role in getting that Indian doctor released from prison. Catherine Chinari defames the victims and she calls the victims crazy. And Catherine Chinari is also racist, and she has taken money from black clients, and she promised the black clients she would defend them, and she didn't defend them. She took their money and then she screwed them. She backstabbed them in court. Catherine Chinari, her own clients. Catherine Chinari would take money, especially, well, from many different types of people, but especially also black people. Catherine Chinari would take money from black people, innocent black people, and defame them. She then would backstab her own clients in court. Catherine Chinari needs to be arrested immediately. Catherine Chinari also herself is a pedo. In fact, before she became Attorney General of Canada, she used to work as a lesbian gym teacher where she was fired for allegedly touching little girls. Catherine Chinari was fired from being a lesbian gym teacher for touching little girls. Catherine Chinari is a pedo. Catherine Chinari is a Canadian pedo. She is the Canadian Attorney General of Canada. And Catherine Chinari needs to be arrested immediately. And the entire Canadian government, in fact, needs to be arrested immediately. The entire Canadian government, the judges, the Canadian judges are pedos. The Canadian lawyers are pedos. The Canadian Prime Minister of Canada is a pedo. They're all pedos. The entire Canadian government is pedos, and they do human trafficking, and they do organ harvesting. The government of Canada is run by pedos. They do human trafficking, and they do organ harvesting. And as you can see by the news articles from Dr. George Duna, which is just one doctor, which is just one example, but I would estimate that 90% of the doctors are either engaging in pedo material, they're doing pedo stuff, 90% of Canadian doctors, or they're covering up, engaging in a cover up for pedo doctors. Hello, comments came in. We got some commenters come in. The United States needs to arrest the entire Canadian government. The United States, so there's a reason why Trump said about making Canada the 51st state, which was pretty bizarre because why would he, like, in the sense that, let me explain. It was bizarre in the sense that he didn't say he wanted to make Mexico the 51st state. He didn't say he wanted to make Russia the 51st state, right? Like, so, Canada has this alleged stereotype, like good reputation of being allegedly nice, right? Everyone thinks, oh, those Canadians are all nice, right? But then why would then Trump come out and say making Canada the 51st state? It's because the White House Canadians, conservative Canadians, good Canadians. There's not many good Canadians, but we're here. There's not many good Canadians, but we're here. Good Canadians. Most of Canada is like 80% of these liberal pedos. That's most of Canada. So, but the good Canadians have sent evidence and have requested and pleaded to the United States and pleaded to the White House for years, for years. So the White House has known about Canada's issue for years. So Donald Trump didn't just randomly wake up one day and say he wanted to make Canada the 51st state for no reason. Donald Trump made this comment after the White House had received years of evidence, of testimony, and of course, the government of Canada, what they do is they call everyone crazy and they discredit everyone. Do I sound crazy right now? The way I'm talking, the way I'm presenting myself? Am I talking like a crazy person? The government of Canada has discredited me and called me crazy. The government of Canada, you see the victims in that news article of Dr. George Dunant. The government of Canada has called the victims of Dr. George Dunant crazy. The government of Canada and these pedo lawyers defended the pedo Dr. George Dunant. They defended the Indian pedo Dr. George Dunant. They defended him, and the government of Canada defamed the victims of the government of Canada defamed the victims of Dr. George Dunant, and the government of Canada called the victims crazy. And the government of Canada also called me crazy. Am I talking like a crazy person? Am I saying any stuff? I am referring to a news article. I am showing you the receipts. I am showing you the news articles. I am showing you the pictures of Justin Trudeau taking pictures with transvestite school teachers. The government of Canada, the government of Canada thinks it's okay for transvestites to be school teachers. Is that not a major red flag that the government of is that not a major red flag that the government of Canada is corrupt? These transvestites, the whole reason they want to dress up like women is so they could use the little girl's bathroom. Dr. George Dunant, Indian Canadian doctor, molested little white girls, and he molested white women. Dr. George Dunant molested white women and white girls, which, by the way, there's many different articles about this, and different articles give different facts. Most of the Canadian articles have downplayed just exactly how many victims there actually were. There were way more than just 21 victims, way more. Due to publication bans, which is the government of Canada's way of not having to disclose all of the victims and try to downplay how many victims there were. And there was even a news article, and I showed it before in another live stream. You could find it, where the news article, the Canadian news article, admits that the hospital engaged in a cover-up. The hospital where Dr. George Dunant works, the Canadian hospital engaged in a cover-up, which means the fellow doctors, the nurses, the hospital management, they all engaged in a cover-up to cover up for their fellow pedo Dr. George Dunant. So the government of Canada engages in cover-ups. The Canadian hospitals engage in cover-ups. Why aren't they in prison? Why aren't these nurses who lied and protected this pedo doctor? Why aren't the nurses, those Canadian nurses in prison? Which, by the way, many of them are Indian. And many Indian nurses defended the Indian pedo doctor that you see in the news article. The news article that's on the thumbnail of the live stream. So those many Indians, they have a whole ring. It's a pedo ring. The Indians, especially the Indian Canadians, they run a pedo ring. And there's also many examples and references in movies, not just not just documentaries, because there's many documentaries about it, but there's also even major Hollywood movies referencing the Indian pedo ring. For example, Slumdog Millionaire dives deep into the big pedos ring in India. The Indians in India, they have major pedo issues with pedos. They have tons of pedos. There was another TV show, I think it was called something Robot, Dr. Robot or something, where the Indian character at the very beginning, it was either a movie or I think it was a TV show. The Indian doctor, no, it was an Indian guy. It was an Indian guy at the beginning of the movie, and he was also called a pedo. And then there was another case of a an Indian okay. Subway. Subway restaurants. What happened with the mascot, the spokesperson of Subway, Jared? You remember Jared from Subway was called out for being a pedo? Jared from Subway was found out to be a pedo. And have you noticed how the Subway Sandwiches organization employs like 95% of their staff are Indians? The Subway Sandwich organization, 95% of their employees are Indians from India. In Canada, 95% of the Subway sandwich shops you go to, you will see Indian employees working. Subway Sandwiches, the same organization whose mascot spokesperson was found out to be a pedo. Jared was found out to be a pedo. Do you see the connection with India and the pedos? And also, it's not just Catherine Chinari that does this, but there's also many Indian, Canadian lawyers who defame the victims and call them crazy. Why would they look at the news article? They released a convicted pedo doctor. He should be spending the rest of his life in prison, and they released him. They released him from Canadian prison. And they didn't even want to arrest him in the first place. The hospital, the Canadian hospital, engaged in a cover-up. And there's other news articles, you could find them, that show that the Canadian hospital engaged in a cover-up. Which, by the way, right now, they're also engaging in another cover-up. So Candace Owens, you need to move fast. You need to get all of this stuff fast. Because I have noticed sometimes news articles go missing. In fact, the news article that says about Dr. George Du not being released, the convicted pedo being released from prison, I couldn't find that news article when I was searching just now. It took minutes. That one used to come up right away. The one saying how a convicted pedo Indian doctor was released from Canadian prison, that news article used to come up when you search Dr. George Du not. The news article would come up on like the first page. I had to suddenly now scroll to like the 6th, 7th page of the Google search to find the Dr. George Do Not news article where they say he was released. Why is that? It used to come up on the very first page when you search Dr. George Do Not. So the government of Canada, they are engaging in another cover up. Candace Owens, investigative reporter, Candace Owens, if you really do care about the victims, which I'm not 100% convinced, I'm not 100% convinced that you are, to be honest. Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I don't, I don't, I'm not 100% convinced that you are. Because Miss Candace Owens, investigative reporter, there's been many red flags, and there's been many people who've been two-faced, right? Like, look at this lawyer, Catherine Chinari, who pretended that she was going to fight for people and defend people, and then she backstabbed her own clients, her and the innocent ones. She backstabbed the innocent clients. There's probably innocent people who were sent to prison for the crimes committed by pedos like Catherine Chinari. Catherine Chinari has sent innocent black people to prison. She probably, I mean, like, if she's like if she was one, if for example, she was one of the lawyers that worked on the Michael Jackson case, she would have been like one of the lawyers that had sent Michael Jackson to prison, who Candace Owens believes is innocent. Candace Owens believes Michael Jackson was innocent. Candace and Catherine Chinari, she would have been, if she was one of the lawyers that worked on the Michael Jackson case, she would have sent him to prison. But then Catherine Chinari, she defends the real guilty people. Catherine Chinari defends, like really defends, the guilty pedos, like that pedo doctor that you see in the live stream, like the thumbnail of the live stream. Catherine Chinari defends the guilty pedos, and then Catherine Chinari backstabs innocent clients, innocent Canadians she promised she would defend. She backstabs them and calls them crazy. Basically, all of the victims that were called crazy, they're all telling the truth. Basically, like what I'm saying is 99%, I would estimate that 99% of the victims are that they call crazy are actually telling the truth. 99%. Occasionally, what they have done, because the government of Canada, they're experts at covering stuff up. You saw the news article with the Canadian news article, which admits that the hospital, the Canadian hospital where Dr. George Do Not worked, engaged in a cover-up. So the government of Canada, the Canadian hospital, they engage in cover-ups all the time. And one of the things they'll do, another thing they'll do to discredit victims is they'll take a person who is like an anti-police person. He's not really anti-police. She or he is not really anti-police. They're working for the police. And they will discredit the whole, F the police, anti-police movement. The police are pedos. They're all pedos. The police, the Canadian police are pedos. They protect the pedo doctors, as you could see. They all work together. The pedo lawyers, like Catherine Chinari, defend the pedo doctors. It's a whole network of pedos. The Canadian police are pedos. And a lot of these, and the Canadian police are not just pedos. They're abusers. They beat people. They murder people. The Canadian police. So you've probably seen this. There's a big movement of anti-cop people, anti-police people who don't like to hate the police because they know that the police are the ones who are the criminals. The police are the ones who are the pedos. The police are the criminals. And what they'll do, the media, is they'll take these fake news stories that try to make cops and police look like heroes when they're not heroes. And then they'll take actors who pretend to be so stupid, and then the actors make the cops look good on purpose in the media. That's what they do. Now, there's another thing as well. Like, when I messaged Candace Owens, I told her that I cannot tell her to say everything that I know because I'm still in Canada, and until I am given safety in the United States, I do not feel safe. Like, obviously, I'm talking a lot and I'm giving you a lot of information already. But there are also things that I know about the government of Canada that I don't feel safe talking about until I am given safety and refuge in the United States of America. And I messaged Candace Owens, I messaged the investigative reporter on her website, and I explained this. I gave her lots of information. I pointed her to lots of news articles. I told her lots of information about Canada to begin with. I gave her lots. I showed the corruption. I showed the news articles. I showed the pictures of Justin Trudeau taking pictures with transvestite school teachers. I gave this all of this stuff to Candace Owens, the investigative reporter, who runs the Candace Owens live stream show, YouTube show. But there's also things as well about the government of Canada. Like I said, I don't feel comfortable saying everything exactly, but I can say that it does also has connection to 9/11, and the government of Canada has also been trying to disarm the American people, and they do things to try to convince the American people to disarm themselves. But it's way more than that. It's deeper than that. And I don't feel comfortable. There's certain things, there's certain events that I am aware of that I would like to tell the United States and Candace Owens, but I need to leave Canada and I need to be given safety in the United States from these Canadian nut jobs, these Canadian pedos, these Canadian transvestite school teachers. I need to leave Canada. I want to leave Canada forever. Because if you like, if you see in these, you could see in these news articles that the government of Canada is screwed up in the head. When the government of Canada and the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, takes pictures with transvestite school teachers, you could see that these people, these are the people who are the actual, who are like the Justin Trudeau. Imagine Justin Trudeau calling people crazy. Imagine the government of Canada who thinks it's okay to have transvestite school teachers. Imagine the government of Canada calling other people crazy. And they discredited me. They called me crazy when I'm not crazy. I'm clearly not crazy. They ruined my life, the government of Canada. They discredited me. They ruined my life. They beat me up. They tasered me. They pepper sprayed me in the eyes. Have you ever been pepper sprayed in the eyes? It's not. It is one of the most horrible sensations to be pepper sprayed in the eyes. And I'm innocent. And they brought me up on bogus charges, which eventually were all dropped because the charges were bogus. And suddenly, they full force will defend these actually guilty people. The people who are actually guilty, the government of Canada will defend these pedo doctors. And then the innocent people like me, they will like totally sabotage and backstab innocent clients like me. And then we will go, innocent people in Canada will go to prison while all the guilty people, the guilty pedo doctors like Dr. George Do Not will be freed, or the hospital engaged in a cover up for them. They're all in cahoots. This new Prime Minister of Canada he's from the same Liberal Party as Justin Trudeau. They're friends. Like Justin Trudeau replaced himself with his best friend. You think there's a difference? You think Canada's different now? Someone came in and said Canada has a new PM. It's not Trudeau anymore. Justin Trudeau needs to be arrested. They all need to be arrested. So just because Justin Trudeau's not the PM anymore doesn't mean he doesn't shouldn't be arrested for his involvement in all the scandals, his crimes. See, there's Canada has a lot of people that come in and they'll defend Canada. Okay, Canada lies and pretends as if Canada's like this nice country and that all the Canadians are nice. Like no, no. I would actually say And if I had to guess, estimate, if I had to estimate, guess, I would say 80% of Canadians are psychopaths. 80% of Canadians are lying sociopaths. 80% of Canadians are psychopaths. And 80% of Canadians are lying psychopaths. 80% of Canadians are sociopaths. And one of the tactics that they'll do to try to discredit victims, real victims, is they'll take a picture of them smiling. Like like imagine someone was beat up by the police, right? They're in pain. They go to the hospital, they're given morphine because morphine makes you smile. When you're in so much pain because you were just beat up by the police and you go to the hospital and they inject you with morphine and that makes you smile, then they take a picture of you smiling and then the judge turns around and says, "Oh, he's not a victim, he's smiling. He wasn't just beat up by the police. He look at him now in this picture a few hours later smiling." Yeah, they didn't explain the part where maybe that person was brought to the hospital and given morphine or sedated or they did something else to that person or maybe they even wrongfully arrested the person and he was in a jail cell for several hours. And then finally, at the end, after several hours, they said, "Okay, we're gonna release you." And then what would the person do after they realize, like after they've been crying in a jail cell for 7, 8 hours? They're in. Like, keep in mind, I'm talking about innocent people. An innocent person who is wrongfully arrested, who is in a jail cell for 8 hours crying, and suddenly they're told, "Okay, now we're gonna release you." What would the person do? They would smile. They would be suddenly happy. Obviously, they wouldn't be happy or condone what happened to them. Obviously, they wouldn't, just because they're happy that they're being released doesn't mean that they forgive or or now don't care that they were have just been wrongfully imprisoned. But if someone who has been wrongfully imprisoned for years is suddenly told they're about to be released, they would be happy. They would smile. And you take a picture of the person's smile. There's a wrongfully convicted person who was wrongfully convicted for years, who was in prison for years, for example, and then finally they're told they're going to be released from prison, and of course they smile because they're happy they're going to be released from prison after being wrongfully convicted all those years. And then you take a picture of them smiling, and then the judge shows that and says, "Oh, look at this criminal smiling." No, well, actually, there are psychopaths and sociopaths that smile like that, and it's actually the CEOs. Did you just see that video of the CEO? Did you see the video of the CEO that stole that hat from the kid? That was disgusting. In the baseball game, it was a baseball game, and a CEO stole a hat from a kid. That's despicable. That CEO. And where is the mob of people not wanting to throw that CEO in prison or do something to the CEO? You know what I mean? Because if you misgender someone, if you misgender a transvestite like it posing next to Justin Trudeau, like you see, if you misgender a transvestite school teacher, if you misgender a Canadian transvestite school teacher, oh, they'll send a mob of people, right? Oh, if you misgender a Canadian transvestite school teacher, they'll send a mob of people because you misgendered someone. But a CEO steals a hat from a kid in a baseball game, and where's the mob of people for the CEO? And look at that smile. Look at that corrupt smile on Catherine Chinarari's face. Look at her face. Look at her face. That's an evil smile there. That's an evil smile. Look at the face. Look at the which, by the way, Catherine Chinarari. I noticed that she took some of her pictures down. On when you search Catherine Chinarari, when you search her on the internet, some of her pictures suddenly now have been removed. Catherine Chinarari is covering up again. After she has called all of these victims crazy, she called the victims that were the victims of Dr. George Dunant, the Indian pedo doctor, Dr. George Dunant, who molested patients and molested little white girls and molested white women. Dr. George Dunant who molested white girls and white women. Catherine Chinarari called the little white girls crazy. Catherine Chinarari called the white women crazy, the victims crazy. Calling her, Catherine Chinarari called the victims crazy. All of the real innocent victims, Catherine Chinarari, the disgusting, despicable Canadian lawyer, Canadian Attorney General of Canada, Catherine Chinarari calls all the victims crazy. The entire Canadian government needs to be arrested. She is a wacko. Catherine Chinarari is a wacko. And she also did go to Communist China, and she's eaten dogs at the Communist China Dog Eating Festival. And she works for Communist China. She protects Communist China. There were so many Chinese criminals that Catherine Chinarari protects. The actual innocent people, Catherine Chinarari backstabs the innocent people and sends the innocent people to Canadian prison. And then Catherine Chinarari protects all the guilty people. So all of Catherine Chinarari's innocent clients, she backstabs them, calls them crazy, and sends innocent Canadians to prison. And then all of the guilty people, the guilty Canadians, Catherine Chinarari defends the guilty Canadians full force. She full force defends the guilty Canadians. She covers up for the guilty Canadians. And many of those guilty Canadians are Chinese Canadians and Indian Canadians. Like you saw Catherine Chinarari defended the Indian pedo doctor. Catherine Chinarari also defends many communist Chinese Canadians who engage in hacking, computer hacking, other events against the United States of America. Catherine Chinarari defends Chinese companies, evil Chinese companies that do evil things. China, the same country that has a famous dog eating festival where they eat dogs and cats. And that's a fact. If you Google it on Google, it's a fact that Communist China has a famous dog eating festival. In fact, there was it was either a 1 or 3 part episode of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. It was an episode of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills where Lisa Vanderpump protested the famous dog eating festival of China. Lisa Vanderpump, one of the housewives of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills TV show, Lisa Vanderpump did a whole episode where she protested Communist China and the dog eating festival of Communist China. Now, on the other hand, Catherine Chinarari, who defends Communist China and actually went to Communist China, and Catherine Chinarari ate dogs in Communist China. Look how fat Catherine Chinarari is. She's like 400 pounds. Do you see how fat and disgusting Catherine Chinarari is? She didn't get fat by being a vegetarian. Catherine Chinarari didn't get fat. She's not a vegetarian. If she was a vegetarian, she wouldn't be so fat. Catherine Chinarari got fat. She eats meat like crazy, Catherine Chinarari. She eats everything. She'll eat anything that moves. Catherine Chinarari has eaten dogs at the Chinese Communist Dog Eating Festival of Communist China. Catherine Chinarari, not only does she defend communist Chinese criminals, not only does Catherine Chinarari defend communist Chinese, evil, corrupt communist Chinese companies, Catherine Chinarari also defends communist China, and Catherine Chinarari has visited communist China, and Catherine Chinarari has eaten dogs at the Communist Chinese Dog Eating Festival of Communist China. And I see a lot of people coming in, these commenters, and they're defending Canada, or they're just spreading that misinformation to try to defend Canada. See, Canada, they employ people to do cover-ups. Just like that Canadian hospital that you see in the Canadian news article, where a Canadian news journalist even admits that the Canadian hospital engaged in a cover-up. That's what they do. The Canadian nurses cover up. The Canadian doctors engage in cover-ups. The Canadian lawyers engage in cover-ups. So, I'm sure I'll get more commenters that are and sometimes you just get commenters that really don't know. They really are shocked they're really shocked to hear this about Canada. And I've been trying to tell the truth about Canada for years. They have beaten me up. They've tried to silence me. They've beaten me up. They discredited me, called me crazy. They tasered me. They pepper sprayed me. They wrongfully imprisoned me, for which eventually all the charges were dropped because all the charges against me were bogus. I am actually an innocent, real innocent victim. I'm the victim, and I'm innocent, and I'm the real victim. And then, of course, Catherine Chinari, people like Catherine Chinari, lawyers like Catherine Chinari, they take actually innocent victims and then they make them look crazy. They then make them look guilty. They put them in prison, Canadian prison wrongfully. And you know that the charges against me were bullshit because they were all dropped. Because when I kept demanding to go to trial, they wouldn't give me a trial because they knew they would have lost in trial. That's why they wouldn't give me a trial. I spent 2 years in Canadian prison demanding a trial. They would not give me a trial. They tried to pressure me. They tried to get me to convince me to plead guilty. I would not plead guilty. I kept having to go through all of these different Canadian lawyers, corrupt Canadian lawyers that I had to fire. Every new Canadian lawyer, they're all corrupt. They're all a gang. They're a gang. It's a whole network of them. The Indian pedo doctor, Indian pedo lawyers, pedo lawyers like Catherine Chinari. It's a whole gang of them. They're a whole gang of pedo lawyers, pedo Canadian doctors, pedo judges. It's a whole gang of them. They're a whole gang. And I had to fire several lawyers. If you had seen how they mistreated me, but of course, they're not going to show the parts where they mistreated me. They probably have me in prison where they're going to show parts of me lashing out, like defending myself. And they're only going to show the clip of me defending myself, which they're going to try to make me look guilty. Like, for example, I was just punched 10 times, right? I was in prison and they were punching me like six guys, six Indians, because, there were also Indians in prison. Six Indian inmates punching me several times. I go to throw one punch in self-defense, and then they just show the part where I'm defending myself. And then they make it look like I punched the Indian guy first. Nope. Nope, that's not what happened. Nope. Every time I have ever done something has been in self-defense. And because, they control the camera footage in prison, they can set someone up. They can literally someone will be getting beat up, and as soon as that person goes to defend themselves and throw a punch back, then they can take the footage, edit the footage, and make it look like the person who was actually the victim who was being beat up, as if they were the aggressor and they threw the first punch. I'm gonna tell you, anyone who listens to me talking, do I sound like a person who throws the first punch? No, I defend myself. And sometimes there were even cases wherein I didn't even defend myself because I knew that if I tried defending myself, they would beat me up even more. And that's sad, eh? There's many victims and there's many incidents. Sometimes you just have to defend yourself. Sometimes it's a reflex, right? But then there's also cases and there's many incidents in prison where if you defend yourself, it makes it worse. There was inmates that would just let themselves get beat up because they knew that if they tried defending themselves, it would be even worse. And guess who was beating them up? The security guards. Look, if this Indian doctor that you see in the live stream and the thumbnail of the live stream, if an Indian doctor are being convicted of being pedos, if Canadian doctors are pedos, you don't believe what the evil stuff they do in prison? They're liars. The Canadian justice system is a bunch of liars. Canadian judges, it's a network of pedos. They're liars. There was a lawyer that I had that, like, the stuff that he did to me, he abused me, the lawyer. And like he pretended like he was gonna help me, like he was gonna get me out of prison, he was gonna fight for me. I go to meet with him and he's so nasty to me, and he makes reference to the fact that I'm a homosexual, and he asked me to, like, and I wasn't at first sure if this was a joke or if he really meant this. And he said to me, if he'll get me out of prison. He will, like, as a lawyer, he would get me out of prison if I licked his behind. A Canadian lawyer who I'm still not sure if he was homophobic, I believe he was, told me that he would only agree to get me out of prison if I licked his behind. I said no. And then when we were in court, when I was actually trying to fire him in a very diplomatic way, this lawyer decided to throw me under the bus and tell lies about me. Not throw me. I mean, throwing someone under the bus is what, but like this wasn't even, this was worse than throwing someone under the bus because they were just, the lawyer was just flat out lying about me, calling me crazy. Another lawyer calling me crazy, lying about me, defaming me, calling me crazy. Said, oh, they said, oh, their client has mental issues. No, I don't have mental issues. You have mental issues. And then when I tried explaining why I was firing the lawyer, because he said that he would only help me get me out of prison if I licked his behind, you know what I mean? And he didn't actually say lick his behind. He said it more graphically, but I'm not going to repeat exactly what that until I'm actually in a courtroom. I'm not like until I'm actually with good people with like if there are such a thing as good Americans that actually care about these kind of issues, then I will explain, I will say verbatim what was said. But right now, because this is a live stream, I have to be careful what's said on the live stream. So, like, he asked me to lick his behind, but he actually said it in a different way, right? He said it different words, more vulgar. But because this is a live stream, I'm not going to repeat it verbatim right now. But can repeat it verbatim exactly what he said when if he's ever brought to justice for that. And then in the courtroom, um, and now I know after the fact that they edited the footage of the courtroom footage because what happened was I was firing this lawyer. I was trying to explain why I was firing him. I even mentioned that I also suspect he's homophobic. I mean, unless he really wanted me to do that to him, right? Or was he just doing that because you see how I could be not sure if this was some sort of homophobic thing. You could see how in this case, right? Right, obviously in this specific case, I'm not 100% sure if he actually wanted that or if he was just saying that because he didn't like gay people. So I'm not sure exactly yet. But obviously I wasn't going to give in to that horrible request that he had. He was supposed to be my lawyer. He was supposed to be defending me, and he was trying to take advantage of me. I was in a vulnerable position as an inmate, as a prisoner, wrongfully imprisoned wrongfully. I was innocent, and this lawyer tries to, and then he turns around, which by the way, yeah, I'm trying to get to the point. He turns around. I'm trying to get to the point of how they edited the footage because I also want to bring up the fact that they edited the footage because I know when there was an argument obviously between me and him when I was firing him. At first I tried to do it diplomatically, and then he turned around and called me crazy. The lawyer that I was firing the lawyer, I was firing this guy in the courtroom, and then he turned around and tried to call me crazy in the courtroom. And he also called me another word. He called me a homophobic, he called me something homophobic. And then I was repeating simply what he said to me. And then the courtroom, the judge, who's a sociopath, the judge who's a lying sociopath, tried to make it look like I called him that name, right? So the judge asked me, "Oh, can you repeat what he said?" And I repeated what he said verbatim. And then the judge turned around and tried to make it look like I called him that name. No, 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 no. That's not what happened. Why would I call it? First off, especially like if we're in an argument and I'm calling someone a name, I mean, there's obviously they did something. Obviously, if the lawyer was a good lawyer, Why would I be calling a lawyer a bad name? Why would I call a bad name to a good lawyer? If the lawyer's a good lawyer, why would I call him a bad name? So if I was actually calling him a bad name, then there was a reason he was doing something bad. And so this judge, this sociopath judge, when I was explaining why I was firing this guy, I was explaining why I was firing this lawyer, the judge turned around and said, "Oh, well, can you say verbatim what he said? And I just want to hear verbatim what he said. No other." And so I said, "Okay, this is what he said." And then I said the word that he said. And then they made it look in the courtroom, because these are sociopath lying judges and sociopath lying lawyers. They made it look like I called him this name, which is not true. He called me the name first. And if I've ever called someone a name, it's only in retaliation or as part of self-defense. Like if someone calls me crazy, I'd be like, "No, I'm not crazy, you're crazy," right? If someone calls me stupid, I'd be like, "No, I'm not stupid, you're stupid," right? That's normal people how I normally respond, right? Normal people like me, innocent people. If someone calls me stupid, I'd be like, "Oh no, I'm not stupid, you're stupid," right? That's the way I am. I defend myself, obviously, if I'm being attacked verbally. Um, unless of course, the lawyer promised me, "Oh, all you have to do is remain quiet, and then you don't have to say anything, and the lawyer's gonna take care of everything." Sometimes the lawyers do that, right? The lawyers say, "Oh yeah, you just have to go to court and remain quiet the whole time. Don't say anything, and the lawyer will take care of everything, and the lawyer will defend you." And then I start listening to what the lawyer's saying. I'm like, "You're not defending me. What the hell are you saying? And you're flat out lying." I had to fire a lawyer right in the middle of a hearing because then she suddenly started saying that I was crazy. What? You just spent a minute on the phone. Like, of course, they don't spend long on the phone with you, telling me you're gonna defend me. Oh, you're gonna defend me. You're gonna defend my rights because I'm innocent. I told her how innocent I was. Then we go to the courtroom and she starts calling me crazy. My own lawyer in the courtroom. I did not consent for you to defame me. I did not consent for you to call me crazy. And then I suddenly was in shock for 3 minutes. Like, what did she? And I couldn't even hear at first what she said because I was in a box, like behind a glass box, and it was enclosed. And I'm like, what did she say? And when I finally was able to find out exactly what she said, I'm like, so of course I was in shock for 10 minutes, just sitting there listening to this lawyer like lie about me. And then I said, "You're fired," and I had screamed that she's fired. But of course, they're not going to show that part, right? They're not going to show the whole videos stuff, right? They're not going to show that I was the victim, I'm innocent, and that they were attacking me. And anything I've ever done was in self-defense. Yeah, in Canada, especially the amicus lawyers, amicus. So someone came in, DC, DC came in. Thank you for your comments. DC came in and said, um, DC came in and said China, Russia, Israel, Iran, or sorry, public defenders don't work for the crown, right? Yeah. So public defenders are garbage, and public defenders defend the crown. Public defenders don't work for the clients. Public defenders throw the clients under the bus. And even like me, I was actually innocent, and throwing someone under the bus. Sometimes that implies that they're guilty, but I actually wasn't guilty. I was innocent, and the lawyer actually like called me crazy. Just like they call the victims of Dr. George not crazy. You see those news articles of the Indian doctor? They called all those victims crazy. The hospital, the Canadian hospital engaged in a cover up. And they called those victims crazy too. I'm a victim. They called me crazy. Now, also keep in mind that what's even worse about it was I was in a box, in a glass box, where I could barely hear what was being said. They had a little audio mic which would turn in on and off. The audio in the box would turn on and off, so I couldn't hear everything because sometimes the audio would turn off, and I was complaining. I kept complaining to the bailiff, "Hey, the audio keeps turning on and off. I can't hear everything that's being said." So several times the lawyer, she said things that I couldn't hear, and I'm like, "What did she just say?" Like the audio in the box kept going on and off. I was in a glass box, handcuffed, with full chains, handcuffed, wearing orange. or it was kind of reddish, full on handcuff, like it was a reddish kind of jumpsuit, reddish orange. It was a reddish orange jumpsuit. I was in an orange jumpsuit, in chains, handcuffed, in a glass box where I could barely hear what was being said, and then the lawyer was lying about me and calling me crazy. And then also, by the way, when I had been being dragged to the courtroom, they had assaulted me on the way when I was being dragged. A Chinese Canadian, what do you call the police that work at the jail that bring you to the courtroom? The I'm not sure, I can't remember what they call them in Canada, but anyways, they call them like security guards basically. They're like Canadian, like, I think in the United States, no, sorry, I can't remember what they call them in the United States. I think in the United States they call them bailiffs or something. Anyways, in Canada, they call them like security guards basically. And so the police, they're police officers though. They're like special police security guards. The ones who bring you back and forth to the courtroom, the ones who bring you into the courtroom when you're in chains, right? So while they were bringing me also, by the way, into the courtroom, one of the Chinese ones had whacked me in the head because they expected me to just know where the courtroom was. Like they were dragging me though, like they were holding me and they were telling me to walk, right? So there were like five of them holding me on either side. They were like dragging me, like forcefully dragging me, like very roughly handling me, manhandling me very roughly, and not manhandling and like like they were abusive. These guys to me, they were abusing me. So they were dragging me, and then one of the guys is while he's telling me directions, like oh which way to walk, which way to turn, while they're holding me also, like they're literally dragging me. One of the guys says, "Oh, go that way." I'm like, there's three that ways. Which that way, right? So he says, "Go that way," and I thought he meant that way, but he meant another way that way. And then I just walking. I wasn't running fast. I wasn't going fast. I was moving at their pace because they were actually pulling me, right? And then the guy says, "No, the other that way. I meant the other that way," and he slaps me in the head. This Chinese guy, a security guard. And there were many of the, I would say 50% of them were Chinese, but obviously though in that case, it was like one Chinese guy and a white girl, a white woman, white security guard, and then two or three white guys, and then the Chinese one slapped me in the face. He said, "Oh, that way," and then he said, "Oh no, he meant the other that way." I'm like, how would I know which that way you meant? Because there were like three that ways. He's like, "Okay, now go that way." I'm like, okay, I thought he meant that way. I went that way, and he said, "No, I meant the other that way," and he slapped me in the face. So imagine you've been beat up, you've been abused, and by the way, just keep in mind, days prior to the bail hearing, I had been tasered. I had been tasered, and they had pepper sprayed me, hit me. Like imagine, so then days later you're going to a bail hearing, which by the way, you think it's just a bail hearing. I was told it was just a bail hearing and then that was just going to be about discussing bail. And then suddenly at the bail hearing, they start throwing accusations at me. They start talking as if I'm guilty. And the lawyer's lying about me. The lawyer is calling me crazy. And I was told that this would just be a bail hearing and that I would have the opportunity to have a real trial and I'd have the opportunity to prepare for a trial. And I was never given that. I was never given a real trial. I was never given the opportunity to prepare for a trial. I was given a very corrupt bail hearing where they decided they started throwing accusations at me as if I was guilty and they denied me bail. And the lawyer who was supposed to be defending me, she called me crazy. Do I sound like a crazy person? Am I talking like someone who has any sort of. And they also called the victims crazy. They also called the victims of the other victims. I'm a victim too, but the victims of the Dr. George Dunot case. So the live stream, the thumbnail of my live stream that I did the thumbnail picture for. Those victims, the white girls that the Dr. George Dunot, the Indian doctor, right? The thumbnail is of an Indian doctor, an Indian pedo doctor in Canada who was convicted, This guy was actually really guilty, and the lawyers defended this guy who's really guilty. See, all the really guilty ones, like the pedos, it's a whole network of pedos. Catherine Chinari, she's a pedo. She defends the pedo doctors. She defends the pedo police. She defends the pedo judges. There's a whole network of pedos. So the pedos, they all defend each other. But then the actually innocent people like me, which keep in mind, I was accused of my charges where they accused me of punching cops in the face. Also, racist cops. I was accused, that's what I was charged on. Those were my charges. And also, I was accused, I was accused allegedly of threatening the veterinary hospital that they euthanized my dog, they murdered my dog. A veterinary run by Indians. Well, it wasn't all Indians, but there were Indians that worked there, right? So of course it was a mix of Indians and white people. So do you not see a pattern here? A veterinary hospital that employs Indians, they euthanized my dog, they murdered my dog, and I sued them. Anyway, there's a whole live stream. There's a whole other live stream. So and also the other reason too why they came after me, the government of Canada has come after me so hard, is because I have been a critic of Justin Trudeau for years. I knew before the blackface scandal that that guy was a creep. I knew he was a pedo. I knew before the blackface scandal where Justin Trudeau lied about blackface 3 times. I knew before that scandal that Justin Trudeau was a liar. He was a creep. He was a pedo. And I had called out the government of Canada for years on this bullshit BS stuff. And so there has been many things they've done to me. They murdered my dog. They pepper sprayed me. They tasered me. They harassed me. They gang stalked me. They followed me. They stole my money. They have done so many things to me. I've been a victim of Canada for years. So this is why I want to leave Canada forever. Like I literally called North Korea. Like you know that it's bad when you're calling North Korea and actually considering maybe going to North Korea. Because maybe North Korea doesn't put up with this kind of crap. You know, I want to go to a country where as long as you are a nice, respectful person, you are treated like that. I don't want to go to a country like Canada that's run by pedos. Canada is run by pedos. Just like that doctor in the thumbnail, that is the news article, the Indian doctor was convicted of being a pedo. He molested little white girls. An Indian doctor molested white girls on the operating table. He molested white women on the operating table. He's a pedo. These are all pedos. And I also called out Justin Trudeau for being a pedo. So I have, like, I'm actually innocent. And I, so there was also like some accusation that I was, anyways, so um, basically what happened was my mother, who doesn't like dogs, my mother doesn't really like dogs. She just uses them for protection, or she just kind of, you know what I mean? My mother doesn't really like dogs. And my mother is vindictive, and she was like bringing my dog to be euthanized. But also I was like the legal owner of the dog, so it was my say. And the veterinary clinic had no right, especially when I called them and told them not to euthanize my dog. The veterinary clinic went behind my back and did it anyways. And my mother brought my dog to be. So you can imagine why I would be pissed off at my mother, right? You could be imagine why I would be angry at my mother. My mother brought my dog to be euthanized. That was a perfectly healthy dog, a normal dog. So I got into an argument with my mother, and um, it was a verbal argument. And then the judge, they lied in the courtroom, and the judge turned around, and this isn't a bail hearing. I was just listening to them read the accusations. I was expecting to have my trial eventually, but this was a bail hearing. I was in handcuffs. I was in chains. I was in a glass box. I could barely hear what was being said. I had just been slapped on the way by the Chinese security guard. And The judge in the courtroom says, "Oh, he threatened his own mother." I didn't threaten my own mother. They don't explain the part of the story where my mother brought my dog to be euthanized. No, they don't explain that part of the story. They just turn around and say that I was verbally arguing with my mother. I was seen screaming at my mother, and the judge in the courtroom says he screamed at his own mother and he threatened his own mother. No, that's not what happened. What happened was my mother brought my dog to be euthanized because my mother's sick in the head, and I was in a verbal argument with my mother because she had brought my dog to be euthanized. And then the veterinary clinic went ahead and euthanized my dog, even though I told them not to do it. And I even told them that I was the owner of the dog. Because the veterinary clinic was run by sick Indian veterinarians, they love euthanizing dogs. The Indian vet and the white veterinarians, they're both sick. The white veterinarians, the Indian veterinarians, they're sicko people who like euthanizing animals. And I said, "You are not euthanizing my dog. How dare you even suggest to euthanize my dog? You are not euthanizing my dog." And they euthanized my dog, and they even lied about it. And there was even other stuff they did. And they actually charged me as well. They decided to charge my credit card after I told them not to euthanize my dog. After I told them that I was going to pick up my dog and leave, they went ahead and euthanized my dog and then decided to charge me like $5,000. So you murdered my dog. The Indian veterinarians, it was a mix of Indians and white, like white Irish psychopaths, Irish and French Canadian. It was a mix of French Canadian. So there's a veterinary clinic, and the veterinary clinic had Indians working there, French Canadians working there, psycho Irish veterinarians working there. And they euthanized my dog. They murdered my dog, and then they charged $5,000 to my credit card. That my credit card was on file. This veterinary clinic. You can imagine why I would be pissed off at this veterinary clinic, right? But then in the courtroom, in the bail hearing, which I was expecting it only to be a bail hearing, suddenly they tried to turn it into a trial, and I was caught off guard. I wasn't expecting that. They start throwing accusations saying that I was harassing the veterinary clinic for no reason. They said that I was just mentally ill. That's what they said. They called me crazy. And they said, "Oh, these nice veterinarians who are medical professionals." And they also called that Indian pedo doctor a medical professional. The Indian lawyer, he also said the Indian doctor that in the thumbnail, the Indian doctor, Dr. George Duna, they called him a medical professional. And then the way they portrayed it in court, they said, "Oh, this guy was for no reason harassing this veterinary clinic for no reason." No, first off, I wasn't harassing them. I actually sued them, and then they hired a big fancy law firm. They had my case thrown out. I wasn't even served a notice in the civil lawsuit. In the civil lawsuit, I sued these guys. I was self-represented. I sued the veterinary clinic as a self-represented litigant because I couldn't afford to hire a lawyer. I couldn't afford to hire a big fancy lawyer, a big fancy law firm, and I sued them myself as a self-represented litigant. I sued the veterinary clinic for all the stuff that they did. And I also demanded the camera footage, the security camera footage showing what they did to my dog, because I know they murdered my dog. First, they tried to pretend like my dog just died. My dog just did. How does someone's dog just randomly die at a vet clinic, at a vet dog animal hospital? The real purpose of a veterinarian is to save a dog's life, not to euthanize a dog. So they were liars. The Indian scammers, Indian liars. They euthanized my dog. They murdered my dog. They charged $5,000 to my credit card. And especially, how can I pay for a lawyer? How can I even go about paying for everyday things when this veterinary clinic, not only did they euthanize my dog, they murdered my dog, they covered it up, they lied about it, and then they even charged $5,000 to my credit card. So, in the process of suing these people, I was suing the vet clinic. They said I was harassing them with lawsuits. They said that they accused me wrongfully of harassing a veterinary clinic when I was merely suing them civilly with a civil lawsuit. And they actually even hit me. They're the ones who hit, and they lied about me, and they stalked me. The Indians, they're a big gang. They're all a big gang. The Indians, and it was also French Canadians and Irish, but especially the Indians. They're a big gang. The Indians are a big gang, and they gang stalked me. They harassed me. They cyberbullied me. They called me crazy. They defamed me. These people murder my dog. They charge $5,000. So these veterinarians, they euthanized my dog. They murdered my dog without my consent. Without my consent, I did not agree for them to euthanize my dog. No, no, no. I did not agree for these veterinary psychopaths to euthanize my dog. No. Euthanization is murder. These veterinarians are psychopaths that like euthanizing animals. They like to kill animals because they're psychopaths, these veterinarians. I did not agree, consent for that. No. And then they also charged me $5,000 to my credit card. And then they harassed me, cyberstalk me, bully me, call me crazy, and defame me. And they also, when I was having the civil lawsuit, they had their lawyer, their big Toronto lawyer. They had the lawyer went and dismissed my case without me even knowing that the case was going to be dismissed. I was supposed to have been served a notice of a motion to dismiss. That I was never served a notice of motion to dismiss. So I didn't even know there was a court date. So they went to court without me, and this lawyer for the other side had my civil case dismissed without me present because I was never served a notice of motion to dismiss. I was never served the notice of the motion. I was never served the motion to dismiss. So I didn't know that there was a court date. And so how could I have gone to defend against this motion to dismiss when I wasn't even served that there was a no that so this dirty, creepy, corrupt lawyer on the other side, she went and filed a motion to dismiss. She didn't serve me the motion like she was supposed to serve me because I'm supposed to be notified so that I can go and defend against the motion to dismiss. She went without me. She went to court and this lawyer for the other side, she had my case dismissed without me present. Then she told me after the fact that she had the case dismissed and thrown out, and I was never served a notice to I was never served a notice of the motion, so I was never made aware that there was a court date. She was supposed to serve me, she didn't, so she committed fraud. So it's a whole big cover. It's a gang of cover up, and I was self-represented too. It's a whole. They're a gang. I imagine me, a self-represented. I'm the victim. Like I'm distraught. Like They murdered my dog. These psychopath veterinarians murdered my dog. Imagine me having now to like fight these people in court as a self-represented litigant. You know how hard it is to be self-represented? Like all of these court forms, you have to go fill out all these court forms, you have to file all these documents, you have to put the stamp in the right place, you have to do all of these things. It's hard to be self-represented. That was like a full-time job to be a self-represented litigant. And then they use all this court terminology that like doesn't, it's not straightforward court terminology. They do it on purpose to confuse you. They put me through hell, Canada. Canada put me through hell. And I want to see justice brought to Canada. I want to see the United States of America arrest every Canadian politician, every Canadian doctor, every Canadian lawyer. I want to see the United States of America arrest the entire government of Canada. I'm not going back to America. I did try going to America before. I went to Detroit. I also went to Ohio, and I was mistreated. I was beat up in Ohio. I was by dirty, corrupt, you know what, thugs. So of course, Michigan, Detroit is there's thugs everywhere. But keep in mind that, black people never euthanized my dog. It wasn't black people who euthanized my dog. It was a mix of white people and Indians who euthanized my dog. So the people who euthanized my dog were a mix of white veterinarians and Indian veterinarians. Those are the people who euthanized my dog. Black people didn't euthanize my dog. I moved into a black neighborhood and they immediately treated me like I was a cracker. They called me cracker. They called me cracker. They beat me up. They stole my money. So then I left Michigan. I went to Ohio, and Ohio, they're thugs. They're thugs in Ohio. They're thugs in Michigan. And I'm not going to the deep south because, in Canada, we heard stories about the deep south. We heard it's worse in the south, right? So I wasn't gonna go to the deep south. Like that was scary, especially the hot weather. You know, I wasn't about to go to the deep south. No. So after I realized that Ohio and Michigan were corrupt, I left the United States. I eventually went back to Canada. Like there was actually it was like there was a whole. It's like it's I can't get into everything right now because it was a long story. But like more that happened there. I've already been talking for like an hour. It's. But basically, if I, like I could write 3 books on this. But basically, like if I could if by God if by some kind of God by miracle from God, I could get onto some American live stream show, like popular one, get my word out there, get my story out there, and also convince the Americans to that the United States needs to arrest the government of Canada, arrest the Canadian lawyers, arrest the Canadian police, arrest the Canadian politicians. I am owed money. They stole money from me. I am definitely owed money, and I deserve to be compensated for what they did to me. But the one thing that I want really the most, actually, that I will be most happy about, and really is the main thing, right? I'm not going to sit here and say, because I don't want to forfeit any rights I have to any claim. So I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't. I do deserve compensation as well. But what I will also say is that if all that comes out of everything is that the United States arrests the government of Canada, if the United States comes in, and so basically, what also needs to happen? Well, let's just put it this way. Let's just put it this way because it's hard to explain. But let's just put it this way, okay? I want the United States of America, among other things. Of course, I would like other things as well, but especially what I want, especially is I want the United States of America to arrest the government of Canada. I want the United States of America to arrest all the Canadian police officers, all the Canadian lawyers, all the Canadian pedo doctors. I want and the police are a network of pedos too, and the lawyers are pedos, and the doctors are pedos. I want the United States of America to arrest the entire Canadian government. So, why would you think that Trump would say about making Canada the 51st state? Why would you think he would say that for no reason? No, there was a reason. And especially since the Americans typically, I mean, when they say that they're going to do something, they've done it. They said that they were going to invade Iraq after 9/11. The Americans said that they were going to invade the Middle East. They did. They did. The Americans said that they would drop 2 nukes on Japan. They did. So for people to just assume that when Trump said he's going to make Canada the 51st state, as if that there was no basis to that, no, there was basis to that. The White House, conservative, innocent Canadians like me, we have sent. There's not many. Like I would say, 80% of Canada is run by liberal nut jobs, but like the 20-30% of Canadians like me, the innocent ones, the real victims, we have been sending evidence to the White House for years about Canada, the truth about Canada. So Donald Trump didn't just out of nowhere just randomly say about making Canada the 51st state for no reason. No, there was a reason. But that's what like, okay, I wasn't able to fully explain everything and until like I really would like the opportunity to get on some major show, Trish Reagan's show. Apparently, a lot of the people who watch my channel, apparently they watch Trish Reagan, which I was confused because at first I thought that my main audience, the people who watched my channel, I thought that they were the Candace Owens people. But no, it's actually the Trish Reagan people. According to the YouTube analytics, according to the YouTube analytics of my channel, the people who watch my channel also watch Trish Reagan. So I have the Trish Reagan audience mostly. Obviously, I probably still also have some Candace Owens people as well. But the main people who watch my channel, apparently they watch Trish Reagan. Trish Reagan. So those are the main people that watch my channel, according to YouTube analytics. So according to the YouTube analytics of my channel, the main people who watch my channel are the Trish Reagan people. But of course, there's probably still also Candace Owens people as well. So initially, for some reason I thought I was getting the Candace Owens audience watching my channel. Um, but it doesn't have to be Candace Owens. Any investigative reporter, any major platform. I would go on Trish Reagan show. I'd go on the Candace Owens show. I'd go on any of those American investigative reporters. I'd like to tell the full story once and for all, and expose Canada once and for all, and get the United States to arrest the entire Canadian government once and for all. That being said, I am tired. I've been talking for an hour, and I gotta go.